Okay, welcome back to World Hoppers, the collaborative YouTube channel where we talk about stuff, mainly book related. I think everyone here has been on World Hoppers. Yes. Okay, then no one needs to be introduced. People know who we are. So today, Alan could explain what we're doing today. Would you like to explain it now that you're clear on what we're doing?
Probably shouldn't be me.
Oh, okay.
We're going to talk about hyped books. Let's debate. Worth it or no?
Well done reading the prompt. So, yeah, we're going to talk about books that are hyped and then decide together, do they deserve the hype that they get or not? So I've asked everybody to prepare some books they'd like to pitch to the panel, either because they think they do deserve the hype or because they don't deserve the hype, or you can feel neutral about it, whatever you wanted to pick for your turn to propose a book. But that's how we're going to do it. And if you disagree with us, just know that you're wrong because this is the official determination of whether or not it deserves the hype. So would you like to start us off, Rodger, with a book to debate?
Sure, I'll just go for the juicy one with Gardens of the Moon because I just read it last month. So book one and the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And I personally don't totally understand the pedestal that it gets put on because having read quite a few Dungeons and Dragons books, it felt literally like a Dungeons and Dragons book, but if the only world building given was kind of obscure conversations and everything else was just deleted.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that series based on a campaign on a Dungeons and Dragons?
I found that out after I started reading it. But people don't talk about that as much. They just talk about, oh my God, it's so philosophical and lovely, and Steven Erikson is my God, to quote recent articles.
Oh, it's a paraphrase. I think it's Sanderson in that one, right?
Technically, yes. But the attitude remains. Okay, panel. I'm guessing that the person who has pitched this book to us is on the side of no, it does not deserve the hype. Is that
correct?
Am I correct?
Yes.
I mean, I don't think Gardens of the Moon deserves the hype, but like Gardens of the Moon isn't my favorite of the books. I read it like 2008 for the first time before BookTube, and no one read fantasy that I knew in person. And so I picked it up and I liked it because it was military. And I mean, Rodger, like you, I didn't know what was going on really, but I was like, oh, there's enough cool stuff that I like. And I mean, I grew up on D&D books, so that aspect was obvious, but didn't bother me. And it wasn't until I like kept reading that, like after the second book, that's when I really liked it. I will agree that Malazan is oversold in a lot of ways by a lot of people who like really eat, sleep, and breathe the series. And I get it. Like I do the same thing for series that I like, but I try to temper people's expectations so that they won't have the reaction that you had, Rodger. Like I try to like prepare people for like what you're actually going to see. And if you really like all that other stuff, like that stuff will appear later, like to the point where like I don't want it anymore. But because that's not why I read. Like I'm reading like, let's watch these people tear this freaking city down. Yes, burn it to the ground. Oh no, everyone died. Oh, like I love that when they're standing around being like, what is death? Can we even make a difference as we? I'm like, I don't like. Let's just move it along. Like, go stab somebody. Let's go. So I mean, I get it.
I'd love to see Alan in philosophy class.
Oh my gosh,
just stabbing people.
It's just insufferable. Like I always tell my students, I'm like, if you're going to take philosophy in college, it's just going to be an insufferable class, guys. Like, wait for it. But I mean, I get it. I think there's certainly more hype now than there was when I started BookTube, and I don't like hype things in general. So like I bristle against all hype. Unless I am.
I mean, if we're talking about philosophy, how do you structure it in philosophy where they're like, if a thing is hyped, then Alan cannot like it. This thing is hyped, therefore Alan doesn't like it.
Correct. Unless the only like counter is if I am doing the hyping. If I am doing the hyping, then the hype is real. Because then I have seen
Alan likes something hyped if and only if Alan is the one hyping it.
Yes,
this thing is hyped. This thing is not hyped by Alan.
Yes, because
therefore Alan does not like it.
I will not be contaminated by the mass insanity of the mob. And so if I am hyping it, it means I have cut through the infection of mob rule and have deemed it worthy. So that's
Well, plus
the
the hype,
word
I feel like for
word
Malazan is so misleading. At least for the first book, people are like, "It's so dense," and I'm like, "But where? Like, sure, you don't have a lot of context for who people are, but like, what is actually happening is not that difficult to follow."
I mean, I agree that the denseness is also oversold.
Because I'm
So,
like, I was expecting like a textbook, and it is not dense like a scientific textbook or something.
oh yeah, I've definitely having read. I hate dense academic work. I hate it. I'm like, I would much rather read an academic work that is narrative in tone than a dry, dusty tome.
Wow, I feel like you
But
just came for my whole thesis. Thanks.
oh, weren't you just dunking on academic text?
Yes.
Okay. Is your thesis a dry, dusty old tome?
I mean, pretty much.
Oh, what's your thesis on?
Iron acquisition pathways in Mycobacterium tuberculosis.
I glazed over like halfway through that.
I just heard tuberculosis, like TB.
Her
Yeah,
pathways,
we're trying to find.
iron pathways,
We're trying to find.
I
new
think you
druggable
mean
targets.
I think you mean consumption.
Yeah, I definitely say the consumption. Students don't know what that is, but nice.
As far as the Malazan hype, I started my Malazan journey this year, and on my third book in 3 months. So I personally will say I do think it's worth the hype.
I do too when it's done. Like, I mean, I like the whole thing, but
But
Gardens of
I
the Moon is
do
not my favorite.
think it's misrepresented by most people. I personally don't think it's that difficult to get into. I think that if you've read adult fantasy before, you'll probably be fine. But you have to go into it with the expectation that you might not be able to run through it as quickly as you do some other books. But and you have to just be okay with being confused for a little bit, because it doesn't do a lot of hand holding or world building in the way
I
that
hate that
you are
phrase
introduced.
so much. I hate that hand-holding phrase from the Malazan fan base. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's a little
but it's just like,
derogatory.
if you
It's
start
not
a
that
book
complicated.
and I know everything, where's the intrigue? Like, the point is that I don't know things and I want to discover them. So that's not a con to me. So I do think it's as good as people say it is, but I don't think it's as difficult to read or as difficult to get into as people say it is. So
For sure. And you know, there's certain phrases that we use that are shorthand, like purple prose is shorthand for something else, just like hand holding is shorthand for a more direct form of exposition. It's not like, it's, at least when I say it, it's not meant to be like, hey, you're an idiot because you need this. It's just, I talk in shorthand all the time, having freaking autism, and my wife's like, why did you say that? I'm like, that's not what I meant. Like, this is shorthand for all those other words that I could have said. But instead I just said the shortest version possible, and then end up having to explain it. So I should have just said the long version to start with.
I feel like from what the three of you have said, I feel like it's safe to say that, like, weirdly, the people who hype it are trying to prepare people for it, to set their expectations right by being like, but like it's really complicated, and but like it's not going to hold your hand, and but like it's really like blah blah blah, because like I think that they are trying to like to stop you from being too disappointed or confused, but at the same time, because that's overdone, now it's like setting it's a different kind of like overhyping it. When they were trying to like temper it, it's become a kind of hype where you're like, this is going to be so complicated.
It's like reverse
bookkeeping.
Yeah, I get it.
But Lazan, from my experience, it doesn't start at the beginning. It starts at like the 11th hour of something that's almost done happening.
Yeah, but I wish people would say that more, where it's like, it doesn't give you much context. You are just thrown into the middle of things, but I don't think that equates he doesn't hold your hand. You're just kind of being thrown into the middle of the situation and getting it as you go, which is fine. But the way that the Malazan fan base that I've heard, I haven't heard you guys talk about it as much, they always come across like, oh, well, if you can't understand it, you plebeians. I'm like, shut up. It's not that good.
I hate that. I hate that with anything. Anybody who tells me I didn't understand the book, it's like, no, I understood it. I just didn't like it. Like,
oh my God, I said those exact words. Like,
seriously, like people think that the only reason you can't like it is because you didn't get it, not that you got it and just did not enjoy that thing.
The video that I have going up on Saturday is literally responding to people who say that.
I hate it. Responding to what? What I just said?
Like people being like, "Oh, you didn't like it? That's because you didn't read it smart enough. That's because you didn't get it.
I just
because
didn't like it.
It's impossible to not like this thing if you truly are a reader."
Yeah. So like, I don't like pretension in reading, period. Like I don't like people who think that they're smarter than certain people because they read these books. Like I don't like I don't like I just don't like I don't like the rabid Malazan people who think that you're dumb because you like Sanderson, and I don't like the rabid Sanderson fans who think that if you criticize anything that is in a Sanderson book that you should be torn apart, have a and dragged to the middle of town, drawn and quartered. Like I just don't know why people like get over it, guys. Like it's okay. Like it's okay if we don't like your stuff. Like ain't nobody coming for Sando. I didn't write that article. So, good gracious.
No, I did. On Twitter if you did.
I know, right? I could have gotten way more subs. I need to write an article.
I had so many people ask me if I wrote that article.
Usually my Twitter is such a safe space, but then all of a sudden that article came out and I was like, what the hell is going on?
I got put in Twitter jail for a week because I made a seppuku joke. It's like, they're like, well, you really should talk to somebody. I'm like, it's seppuku. You thought I was going to disembowel myself with a katana with a second to cut my head off so the pain would stop?
You're about to go to World Hoppers jail, Alan.
What?
You're about to go to World Hoppers jail if you continue in this vein.
Oh, sorry. I just finished reading Shogun.
You should have explained that to Twitter. They would have understood.
I did, and they didn't respond to my response. Like, they didn't respond to my complaint.
Okay, so not the pitch was not Malazan. The pitch was Gardens of the Moon specifically. That's what Rodger was suggested to the panel. So, is Gardens of the Moon worth the hype or no? What do we say?
I mean, I can't judge that because I've read the whole series, so I think it's worth the hype. But like, I just think it's really easy to like if you don't like the first one, like it's easy to not get into it. You know what I mean? Like it's like Dresden people saying, well, you got to read the first 5 books before it really gets good. And a lot of Malazan fans are like, oh, well, just read through book 3. That's like 2,500 pages. Like, that's too much to ask. That's too much to ask of people. Like, if they don't like number 1, maybe give 2 a try because it's slightly different. And if you don't like that, you're good. Like, just move on. It's not for you. That's fine. Like, I understand that. So it's worth it for me. But like, if I had not read Malazan and heard people talking about it the way they talk about it now, I wouldn't read it because it would make me mad.
But if you hadn't read it before and you could somehow be convinced to read it despite the hype, because we know your position on hype, but if you were like forced to read it because of a bet or a buddy read or something, and you had not read it, but you heard all of the hype for it, knowing what you know about Gardens of the Moon, do you think Alan of the alternate universe that has not read it pre-hype would like read it and go, yes, this book is living up to all the hype I heard about?
I mean, no, because I like Gardens of the Moon, but it's not even kind of my favorite. So no, it wouldn't live up to like, you know, people being like, some people like it a lot. And I'm like, it's fine. I like the second book better. So, I mean, no, it has a lot of like elevation, but that is an asterisk in that I'm not in that situation. And I think the series is worth it for sure.
I think I've read Gardens of the Moon this year in January, so I read it with all the hype, and I think it's worth the hype.
Cool. I changed my answer then. It's that one.
It can't be that you read it this year and you think it's worth the hype. That can't be your answer.
Liene hasn't told us if she thinks it's worth the hype, and I know she read it.
I mean, if it's the binary of yes or no, then I would say no, because like it is super, super hyped, and like I don't think it's that great. And I feel like my response to it was like Rodger's, but slightly more positive. But pretty similar to Rodger's, where I was like, okay, so it's like a fantasy story and like, I don't know who anyone is, but okay. And then like the plot itself and like how it all culminates, I was like, this is extremely derivative. And I was like, my mind is not being blown right now. Like, this is fine. So yeah, I was like, there's some cool stuff here. Some of the prose was like really pretty, and I do like pretty prose. So like, I guess I would say I think it doesn't live up to hype, but in fairness to Gardens of the Moon, I do think that the hype surrounding Malazan does tend to say, but Gardens of the Moon is the worst one. So like in that sense, like it lived up to its reputation, if not its hype. Because if I was reading it, because like I was kind of like, well, this was okay, but people also say this one is not that good, or like it's the worst one. So I was like, well, okay, then if this is the worst one, then I concur. So, lives up to its reputation. Yes. Hype. No.
I didn't hate it, but it's just not like mind blowing. Like everybody acts like it is, but I also feel like they say that more for. I think book 3 tends to be people's favorite. I feel like.
Yeah, I think when people say it's mind blowing, they're talking about the series. Because I don't know anybody whose the first book is like their favorite. And if
Bookborn.
I was gonna say Hillary.
Hillary's read
Dead House
2
Gates
of them.
is the superior of the
Yeah,
two.
but she likes Gardens of the Moon
Two.
better. She likes Gardens of the Moon better than Deadhouse Gates.
That's most
That is
people.
an unpopular opinion.
Is it?
Most people like Gardens of the Moon better than Deadhouse Gates. Most people that I
most
know.
people thought the
Stop
other
at
way
the end.
around.
What? I love Deadhouse Gates. I mean, I like it better than Gardens of the Moon, but most people don't like Deadhouse Gates because they don't like that it switches characters or whatever, which is fine.
It's like book 1 and book 1A, and book 3 is book 2.
Yeah. Which one do you like better, Aaron?
I'm actually in the unpopular opinion that I don't think I like Memories of Ice as much, and I'm almost done. So far, Dead House is my favorite.
Oh, cool. Then you might be along with me where the desert books 2 and 4 you like better than the city books 1 and 3.
Like Colton?
I'm with you. Like, there's no one who likes Colton better than me. I'm his number 1 fan. Like, people invite me on Deadhouse Gates discussions just so I can talk about Colton for 20 minutes. Like, that's it. I'm just a guy.
And like that friendship duo. Oh, 10 out of 10.
You can have Akarium and Mappo. I'll take Colton, and you can have the 2 of them.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh. I want to be positive on something. But okay, I'll be positive on my next pass. Because the most hyped book that I have ever read.
So is this the book that you're pitching to the panel now?
Yeah. I assumed we were done.
I was going to say that we should move on to your pick, so well done.
All right. The most hyped book I have ever read is Hero of Ages. The 3rd book in the original Mistborn trilogy. And I guess I can't talk. Well, this is going to be.
Well, do you think Hero of Ages is more hyped than the first 2 Mistborn books? I think Mistborn 100%. Just like as a unit is
no.
People say Hero of Ages is like the best finale they've ever read.
Mistborn Hero of Ages was sold like. People could not stop telling me about how excited they were for me to read Hero of Ages because of how good like the ending was. Like I'll just wait till you read. Like it was way more hyped than like the series was super hyped, which is why I picked it up. So we can talk about Mistborn Era 1 in general and then Hero of Ages specifically. Hero of Ages was so like everyone like I think I liked Well of Ascension so much because everyone told me it's the worst one, and I was like, "This is what do you mean?"
Well of Ascension is my favorite. I think it's my favorite Sanderson book I've ever read.
I also like Well of Ascension the best.
High five, Alan.
But everyone told me that it was the worst, and so I liked it. But everyone's
shocking to me because it's very CG.
Do what?
It's very CG military. Yeah. So like
100%. And Ellen's trying to learn how to, I shouldn't talk in spoilers, but not suck. But Hero of Ages, like. There was just so much about it that I didn't like, that I just didn't enjoy the most. And the ending, there's just not a way to say it that doesn't sound like I'm a douche that knows more than everybody, because that's not it. But like, I read, like when I got to the end, I kept waiting for the thing that was going to like blow my mind. But it's like the thing, the ending happened and I'm like, oh, no, I can see how that would be the most awesome thing if I had not grown up playing like JRPGs where I've seen this exact thing like more than one time, or maybe if I hadn't read a certain D&D series that something similar occurs. And so it wasn't brand, it was cool. Like it was cool. And if I'd been left alone, I'd have been like, you know what? Awesome. Freaking awesome. But I wasn't allowed to read it in a vacuum. It was really, really hyped for me. So it just didn't land the way it was supposed to. Now, Mistborn Era 1 in general, I think is worth the hype, unlike Liene. So this is where we will diverge. But I think Mistborn Era 1 is worth the hype because I really enjoy the series as a whole, Hero of Ages notwithstanding. I think there's a lot that I really like in it. Less in book 3, but so that is my take. I did not find Hero of Ages worth the hype, but I do find Mistborn Era 1 worth the hype. And then Alloy of Law is not good. That was just a side comment.
I think Mistborn Era 1 is worth the hype, and I also think that Hero of Ages is worth the hype. And I also feel like that because I read that series 3 years ago, and I still think about it all the time, and like the
That's cool.
events still stick out. Like it is a very memorable series, and I read like 300 books a year, so anything sticking in my brain is pretty
too many.
difficult. But I can like recall exact scenes and like how I felt when I was reading it. But I also think that some of what Alan is saying is because I read it 3 years ago, I feel like I read it before I was consuming a lot of adult fantasy content.
Yeah.
So I didn't have any expectations going into it. Like I actually gave book 1 3 stars. So I think it has had more of an impact on me post reading it than in the actual moment of reading it. That I think I appreciated more having finished it and seeing like the entirety of the project. But I do think it's one of the best series enders that I've read because I hadn't read anything like that before.
Book 1, 3 stars?
Yeah.
Damn
And listen, let me tell you, I only read book 2 and 3 because I wanted to see if there was going to be a trope that undid what happened in book 1.
I gotcha. I love book 1.
So for Mistborn, the first book, I gave it 4 stars because I was like, it's not like my new favorite book ever, but I was like, that was quite good. And I'm interested to see where it goes. And I thought Allomancy was super cool. And then Well of Ascension, I gave 5 stars easily. I loved Well of Ascension.
Same.
And then I went to read Hero of Ages and I gave that a like generous 3 stars. Because like I hated the ending so much and it borderline like retroactively made me hate the first 2 books. Because like, you know, like the answers to questions, like now if I was to, I haven't reread it since then, but if I was to reread it, like now the answers to questions like change, you know, like your experience of reading something now that you know what something is actually hinting at or what it's leading towards or whatever. So yeah, I really did not like the ending. And that's like one of my OG spicy takes. But yeah, Well of Ascension, I high five that one. I loved it. But also, I mean, without spoilers and stuff, I also like, I mean, I hated the ending of Hero of Ages, like the ending of like the big situation and the magics and stuff like that, the big stuff. But also, like literally when I started reading Hero of Ages, I just felt like certain characters were so different from the way they were before that like I literally thought that like this was like a situation where like I'm supposed to pick up on the fact that that's not really them. Someone is pretending to be them.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's actually really them. Okay, they're just like completely different from how
I agree. They do not feel like certain ones worse than others do not feel like the same characters. That is one of the complaints that I had also. It's very strange, but I still liked it.
So, Rodger, have you read
For
it?
me, I think that the ending is definitely overhyped and not worth the hype. I only found out about Sanderson because when I first started watching BookTube like 2 years ago, I'd never heard of Sanderson before, but I've been obviously reading fantasy books forever. But so I was like, that was the first Sanderson I picked up, and I really liked book 1. And I was a little bit disappointed in book 2 because I wanted book 1, I wanted that premise to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then since things changed, it wasn't my favorite. And then book 3, I kept waiting because everybody always talks about how book 3 just hits them so much and just like, oh my God. And I'm just like, okay. And so it was fine, but it wasn't like, wow, life changed forever. It wasn't that level. It wasn't like Final Fantasy X levels of me sobbing in a corner.
Oh, Final Fantasy X.
So I think that's 3 for it's not worth the hype.
Book 3, yeah.
But I mean, I think it's 3 people for book 3 not being worth the hype.
Yes, and then 1 for yay.
Overall, I think the series is really good, and I think people should check it out if it sounds interesting.
Just stop at Will of Ascension. Good. Just stop there.
I think I'm going now. I don't know if all of you will have read this. I know Liene has read it, but a book that I personally do not think is worth the hype, and I honestly think it is grasping at straws to be classified as fantasy, is Babel by R.F. Kuang.
God.
I don't.
I hate
it. I also don't think it's worth the hype, having never read it.
Alternate history is a genre of fantasy, but this does not alter history enough to be alternate history.
Or at all.
There we go. And then the fantastical elements are so minor and really don't play a significant element, like part of the story. So I think this is like, I said it read like a scholarly memoir, like a TED talk on translation. So I definitely don't think it's
But I would rather do a TED Talk on translation and not have my time wasted with these like attempts at a novel in between.
I was like, it's well researched, but I don't know that academic a novelist makes. Like there's two totally different skill sets for those two different things. And so far the math isn't mathing for me.
Well, I think she could write really like engaging narrative nonfiction. You know, like if she wrote a nonfiction book about, you know, the history of translation and the importance of translation and colonialism and stuff like that, like what Alan was saying about like academic texts that read more like narratively, more engagingly. Like I think she could write an engaging nonfiction book.
Like, I'm sure her thesis is fine.
Yeah, but like that's I think what I said on Goodreads is my review. I was like, as an essay, this is 5 stars. As a novel, 2 is generous. Like
same.
Have you read it, Rodger?
Yes.
Did you love it?
No. The characters were super flat. Like nothing was like surprising or like interesting. And then like the first half is basically like that treatise on translation, but like it just kind of hammers home the same point for like 300 pages that I got in the first 20. And then the second half, I was like, where did this come from? Okay, fine. And it's the only review of mine. It's the review that I had to learn the hide from channel function for because people were not happy with me.
I'm surprised I did get some hate, but I'm surprised I didn't get more hate on my hour-long rant about Babel.
Like each character has like one defining characteristic. One is biracial. One is a survivor. One is a Karen. And one hates Britain. And that's their entire personality every time they're on the page, everything they have to say. And then you have one man who's grooming people to be breeding and then grooming people to be translators. And we never really addressed that.
I would like to use this time to discuss hype, like the nature of hype in general, because I have not read it, but I cannot enjoy it because of the hype that is surrounded it. Because R.F. Kuang gets a hype all her own. Like the hype going into this book, like the Goodreads reviews before this book even launched is the exact kind of like, it's just this rabid, like, and I don't know how to describe it, but it's this rabid, like, celebrity, like, fandom thing where it's like, oh my gosh, like one of them was literally like, every day I wake up and thank the Lord that I live in the day the same time as R.F. Kuang, like stuff like that. It's so overblown. It's like this. It's like it's like my students. Like that's just their culture of like, let's blow everything up to this. And this comes from someone who hyperbole is my stock in trade, and I can't stand this kind of hyperbole. Like it's just
because it doesn't even come off as hyperbole.
No,
it comes off as like
it's just a bunch of like slavering. It just reminds me of like the Saved by the Bell episode with the Zack attack, where they're walking through and all the girls are screaming, ah, and they're like ripping at their clothes and stuff. Like that's what it seems like.
Well, it's like Elvis fever.
Yes, like Babel is not a One Direction concert. Like it's not, but that's just what it feels like. And all of that is just like, and then the reviews come out after it's been read, and everyone is just like, I sobbed for like 8 days straight and then fell into a coma. And like, I had to be ministered by the monks in this abbey on top of this mountain. The tears of like, magical unicorns they had to be administered to me before I could even regain consciousness. I was blasted so hard.
I would really love a review that actually read like that. Like that's a lot more entertaining than it usually is.
And I just can't like it's like these opinions they're not useful to me on whether or not the book is good. It's just like rabid slavering, like and like I hate that kind of hype that surrounds stuff like that. And so I just stayed far away from it, because I'm also of the opinion that like if you're just wanting to make some kind of like point, just write a nonfiction that's doing that. Don't dress it up in like a fantasy. Like, and this comes from someone who I enjoyed the Poppy War. I don't mind things having themes, but Babel to me, again, having never read it, so before people come after me,
Let me
seemed
also
like
tell you, the setup for the main character is the exact same as written
As
in the
Rin.
Poppy War. The first
Yeah.
100 pages are are beat for beat the Poppy War.
Oh, my
Orphan, who has evil caretakers who take them to this superb school to do all this learning so that they can escape from their background, and they are mistreated by said caregivers.
But Rin is more
And then
interesting
a
to read
war
about than
happened.
Robin.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. Like even the like every translation is like every active translation is an act of I don't know, like
Betrayal or something.
betrayal, something like that.
It's act of violence.
Yeah, I just knew that like RF Kwong is she is going to take a stance on something, and that's fine. But like, it just seemed like it was a story just to like, hey, this is what I want you to know. I know a lot about this topic. This is going to be my doctoral thesis.
Well,
but
not
with
only did it
characters.
say, oh, it's an act of violence or blah, 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 and all that's true about the hyped reviews, blah, blah, blah. But there's also the fact that the blurb for the book on Goodreads says that it
it's
is
an
a
answer.
response to the
Yeah.
secret history, a tonal response to the secret history, and a thematic response. No, a thematic response to the secret history and a tonal response to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Two books that individually took a decade to write from two authors who were considered to be masters of their craft. And I'm just like, that's really ballsy to come out and say
If
this
this
book
was
is
written
responding to those books.
by anyone else, it wouldn't have gotten published. If it wasn't an Oxford and Yale educated fantasy writer who shared all of this on Twitter, who got really
and was popular from the
from
Poppy
another series that was based on like historical events, it would not have gotten published.
That's how I feel about Alloy of Law. I'm like, there's no way someone publishes this book if it's not Sanderson. Like, this is not.
I mean, Western is a genre. So
I mean, yes, it could be published as a Western. Yes, it could be like.
But it's also like 250 pages. It does not take up quite as much of your time.
That
it's
is,
not
I mean,
trying
that
to
is
pretend
true.
to be something it's not.
I will never dunk on Sando for how fast I can read those books. Like,
because Alloy of Law was not pretending to be some deep thematic response.
Oh, definitely not. I'm not comparing the two, except for the fact that, like,
Alloy of Law is a thematic response to Shogun and a thematic response to Augustus.
No, and it's a thematic response to Shogun and a tonal response to Lonesome Dove or whatever. So anyway, I haven't read Babel, so y'all don't come after me. Like, I could be wrong. Get mad at the three of them who said they didn't like it.
Well, I also did have a pretty big part of my review where I was ranting about how much people talk about R.F. Kwong, and then it's even misinformation. They're like, she's on like her second PhD, and I'm like, she got a master's, and now she's doing a PhD. Like, that's kind of the way academia works. Yeah. Like, it's not like, oh my goodness. I mean, it's like,
oh my gosh, he's in 12th grade after just finishing 11th grade. Like, that's the progression. If you're gonna
some of the like conversations on like race and class and privilege were taken straight from Twitter. I swear to God, if you have been on Twitter, you have seen these exact threads.
Yeah. Word.
Well, also for all the people who are like, oh, she read Dickens so that she could write in a Dickensian style. Where? No, absolutely. Yeah. She might have read Dickens. That might be true. But they did not read like Dickens, the book Babel.
I have also read Dickens, which, I don't know.
You're saying you could also write in the style of Dickens, having read Dickens?
I could not, in fact, do that. But I have read Dickens. Anyway.
All right, so I guess that's unanimous with the one abstaining.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of one, because when it comes back around to me, I'm bringing the positive back. Like I'm bringing a book that's worth the hype.
I pretty much mostly had positive ones to bring up because I was like afraid to bring up the negative ones, but y'all been doing a fine job of that.
Let's change the tenor. Let's elevate this. I hate dunking on stuff.
Liene has a lot of unpopular opinions. I'm curious which one she's gonna bring out today.
One
Joe
guess.
Abercrombie.
Yeah, the blade itself, is it worth the hype?
Is that really?
I don't know. I haven't read it.
Dang it. Alan's read part of it.
I have read part of it. Is that yours, really?
It won't be if not enough people have read it.
I have read part of it. I have read about half. Wherever Pharaoh's first introduced.
Have you read
part 2? It's the beginning of part 2.
Have you read it, Erin?
I have, and I personally don't think it's worth the hype just yet. But I've only read book 1. It could be. I mean, everyone prepared me that book 1 didn't have a lot of plot.
It is the Gardens of the Moon of the First Law.
Yeah. So I fully I bought the entire 10 books before I read book 1. So I have a lot of faith that I'm gonna like it.
No pressure. Oh God.
And I committed to a read along of reading the entire 10 books after I already bought them. So I feel like I'm gonna like it eventually. But right now, just on
It's
book
just a
1,
sunk cost fallacy at that point. You're like, I'm sure I like this, and you know how I'm sure because I own them all.
I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read the whole thing. But for me personally, not enough happens.
That's fair. Not much happens. I know Alan feels personally victimized by Glocta.
No. Okay, so First Law, I'm not done with it, so I can't make a judge. First Law is talked about in like it is another book that another series that is talked about with like like Joe Abercrombie. And okay, so Stephen Pacey is good, but he's not even my favorite narrator. He is good, but like he's
It's
not
okay that
like
you're wrong.
I mean, yeah, that's fine. I'm okay. I'm wrong all the time. So like I like Stephen Pacey like a lot, but he's not my favorite. And I do like this book because I think Joe Abercrombie has a very strong character voice writing. Like it is there are very few authors who that like if you took away all the dialogue tags, you could know who's talking. And I do like that a lot. That might be my favorite part of Abercrombie's writing. And I like Giselle's an idiot, and I kind of like him despite the fact he's an idiot. He's the worst. And Glock
He's actually not the worst. He's literally the best of them all because he hasn't actually hurt anybody. He's not going out and killing people. He's just
so
a douche.
Stupid, and Glockta's hard to read. There's a lot of torture that I don't enjoy in those scenes.
The torture scene.
In fairness, Glocta's not enjoying it either.
The freaking Baez is the best. Like he's my favorite. Because he's funny. Like he reminds me of me as a teacher, where it's like, I guess that I was wrong when I said that thing, like, or what, and he's just being really sarcastic to Logan when he says, or whatever what's the little one's name? The
Kwai.
One that, yeah, what? Kwai? Yeah.
Kwai.
Yeah, when he's being mean to Kwai. Like, I'm like, nice. I would say that to my kid. So I was enjoying it. Like, I really like the way he writes. I'm not sure what's happening. But I mean, like books where nothing happened don't bother me. I like KJ Parker and the Long Price Quartet. So TBD. I cannot actually say whether it's worth the hype yet. So, but I am enjoying
the Stephen Pacey hype also comes from the fact that like the marriage of a narrator that does distinct voices really well and an author that does distinct voices really well, and having the narrator with the author that can like create these like completely individual characters and voices together like that is just a lot of fun.
So this for me is a case of like Hero of Ages where like I liked it. Like I do like Stephen Pacey. And I think if people hadn't told me how much I was going to like Stephen Pacey, I probably would be saying the stuff that people are saying about Stephen Pacey. But the fact that people kept telling me how much I was going to like him, the problem is like my expectations get like unrealistic. And then when it's just like superb instead of like, mind-blowingly cosmic.
Life-altering.
Yeah. Then I'm just like, oh, you know what I mean? So like, if I could just read everything in a vacuum with no one ever telling me anything about it and never telling me, or if everyone just told me like, hey, that's awful. Like you're like, that book is terrible. And then I read it and I'm like, guys, this book isn't terrible. It's so good. Like that's my ideal life where that people.
I wish I could have organized the internet into all lying to Alan so that he could post an embarrassing video that's like, why does everyone hate the Blade itself? It's actually really great. And Stephen Pacey, you guys are crazy. He's amazing.
Yes, seriously, it would completely alter my consciousness. So, but yes, I am still, on the fence because I got to finish it. But I really like.
Do you still feel that Joe Abercrombie is too smug?
No. So I said, is he smug in the first one because of the stairs and
the chair
stare and chair thing? But since then, no, I find it amusing.
He's just never been as clever as that again, so he can't be smug.
Correct. He hasn't slipped one of those in like every chapter. Then it's smug.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, do you feel suitably hyped for it, Rodger?
Well, I feel like that one doesn't get hyped quite as much because people usually say just prepare yourself for all vibes, no plot, and that. They say that, or they say that he has amazing characters.
Which Alan just did again.
Which, like, I'm not a particularly character-driven reader, so, like, that's not an anti or pro buzzword for me. So I'm just curious, because I have no idea what it's about. So I feel almost like I'm still going in kind of blind because nobody can ever explain what these books are actually about.
Because nothing happens.
I can tell you what it's about.
Now, I'm not hyping the characters. I'm hyping the character voice. They're very distinct. Like, I'm not necessarily saying they're the best characters I've ever seen, considering I've read less than half of a book, but they are very distinct. I will give him that for sure.
Well, I think it becomes like compounding in its impressiveness when he has more and more books and more characters, and they continues to generate people that don't feel like, oh, this is that same character again. Like
That's
they all
impressive.
feel like individuals, and now we're getting to like 30, 40, 50 characters, and they all have distinct voices. You're like, oh my gosh.
It is top of my TBR for May, though, because you and Mara are supposed to be doing a discussion, so I'm planning to read it so I can watch the discussions. So I have the audiobook. It should be coming in a couple weeks, and then I have the physical book.
Stephen Pacey sucks. Just prepare yourself for how terrible the narration is.
Awful narrator.
It's awful.
It'll be the opposite experience of everybody always talking about, what is his name? James Marster is the Dresden File guy, who everybody's like, he is Dresden. And I'm like, if I have to hear him breathe into his mic and make little mouthy sounds one more goddamn time.
How many have you listened to with him? That's
3.
Yeah. It gets better. You didn't think 3 was better than the first 2 as far as that was concerned?
Not really.
Not noticeably.
Not yet. It still sounded like the same audio quality.
I got you.
Well, it would have been like 2005.
Yeah.
So I imagine they've come a long way in production.
I've only read
putting the little net thing up so you're not breathing directly on the mic. I figured that's been around a lot longer than 2005.
I think.
Well,
you
know who underhypes or anti-hypes the First Law is Joe Abercrombie himself. Like when he talks about the original trilogy, he's like, yeah, like I kind of wrote it as one story in 3 parts, and I kind of figured, well, so what if there's not a resolution in book 1? Like this is part 1 of 3, and in retrospect, maybe not the best way to go about that. So, yeah, he also would tell you to be prepared to not know what's happening.
I figure all vibes, no hype is pretty consistent across people who like it or don't like it. They all seem to agree that is true.
Well, I think also most people that have read it would agree with me that like if you really hate the writing style, then that's never going to change. Like that's his writing style. But like it's not that it's never about anything. It's that it's not clear what it's about until you finished it. At which point then you're like, oh, that was actually about stuff this whole time. And I had no way to know because like, it's like if you're driving somewhere, but no one's told you where you're driving, like, you're like, I don't know where we're going. But when you get there, then you're like, oh, this was all like leading to this destination. It all makes sense now. And when you go back and read it, knowing where it's going, then you see all the times that he was nodding at that. But like, there's just like no hint whatsoever that you were supposed to pick up on that. So yeah, that's fair. When I first read it, I hated it. I was like, it's quality prose, but I don't know why anyone would want to read something so miserable.
Really?
I read it a long time ago the first time, and I didn't know what grimdark was as a genre. I just was like, oh, this is a fantasy book. And I was expecting heroes and quests, and it's like the literal opposite of that. So I was like, well, he's clearly like a good writer of words, but like, God, why would you want to spend time with these awful characters doing awful things in an awful world? Jeez, why? So then years later.
Magic? Is there much magic in First Law?
There is magic, but not a lot.
Okay.
Kind of like A Song of Ice and Fire, except even less. But then years later, like I had been reading more grimdark, and people were always saying how First Law is like the best, and I was like, I remember reading that and not liking it, and I was like, all right, I'll try it again, and then I definitely liked it a lot better. But like you're saying, like, but where is this going? Like, what is the point of this? Like, I definitely like had a good time with that, but like there was no point to that. And then it's only like the 4th or 5th time that I read The Blade itself that I gave it 5 stars. So like, I kind of want to say no, it's not worth the hype, but I also feel like kind of like with the Gardens of the Moon thing, where like, in fairness to it, most people who are hyping it are like, I'm hyping First Law, not The Blade itself. Like, so yeah, weirdly, I guess I'm gonna say no on my own pitch of The Blade itself.
It turned around.
Well, Rodger,
agree or disagree? Am I supposed to be positive, or am I still being negative and
just whatever you want?
You can do whatever you want. I'm trying to find something I like.
Okay, well, I don't think Farseer is worth the hype.
I literally had that right here for my next one.
I was gonna pick that for my next one.
Rodger, I hope you got your boxing gloves.
Okay, so I don't think it's bad. However, as a more plot-driven reader, the resolutions that you get at the end of Farseer, thinking of it as a contained thing, not as part of a 16-book series, I found wildly unsatisfying and really quick. Like, the resolution with the main antagonist of books 2 and 3 happens in like less than a page. The reason why the people were doing the rating happens as like an epigraph at the start of a chapter. It just was not satisfying for me from that perspective. And there's a lot of talking about the food that they're eating and where they're sleeping and things that I could not care less about.
I haven't read it, so let's be careful not to.
That's why I tried to be very vague.
Yeah, I haven't read it.
Well, you haven't read any? I thought you read Assassin's Apprentice.
I have read zero Hob, but Hob is one of these things that it's not rabidly, it's not R.F. Kuang hyped, but it is extraordinarily hyped with if I have to, and sorry, all of my friends, bless you, I love you dearly, but if I have to hear one more person talk about sobbing at the end of a freaking Robin Hobb book, I'm going to tear my hair out. Like, I'm sorry you couldn't read the last page because, or, you know, you couldn't get through this, or like you had to go to therapy, or
the Instagram selfie of the tear.
Yeah.
And they say, I just read whatever.
Yeah. Or like your spouse divorced you, or, you know, I don't know, threw your kid out the window or something, whatever it caused you to do.
All these things definitely have happened thanks to Hob.
I just like, it is so like, and it makes me sad because I do want to read Hob, but I know that I'm going to have the same experience as Hero of Ages and Stephen Pacey, to where like I'm going to be like, you know what, this is really good. But if only no one had ever said anything to me about it. So again, I don't actually hear that much about Farseer other than like, Hob, why, Hob, you're so mean to your characters. Like, Hob is just so, like, oh.
In fairness, she's quite cruel.
She hates Fitz.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Nobody goes through it quite like Fitz.
I have no opinions other than, like, I am concerned the hype has messed it up for me. So sorry, my friends who love Robin Hobb, Evie especially. Evie, I love you dearly. So I'm sure it's just as good as people say.
I mean, unfortunately, Farseer is my favorite trilogy in all of the Realm of the Elderlings. So apparently, according to me, it just all goes downhill from there. So
have you finished all of them?
I just finished the last one in the very beginning of March.
Did you hate Dragon Wilds or whatever? Rain Wilds?
I do think it's my least favorite in the series, but I do think people are too hard on it. Like, it's not that bad.
Gotcha.
But it's also like to the people losing their minds over the books. Like, I almost every ending of each of the individual series, I didn't like almost any of the endings. I always liked the middle books the best.
Oh,
and
cool.
even then, like my favorite middle book was the first middle book, Royal Assassin. So
okay, so this might be contradictory, but I think every criticism that Rodger made is very valid. I think it's all 100% accurate, but I do still think it's worth the hype. Yeah. And I say that because I've read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, but even in just a trilogy, because we're just talking about the Farseer, I personally have not read such an in-depth character analysis and like felt like a character was so fully realized that they were a person that existed beyond the page more than I have with Fitz. And I feel like the Realm of the Elderlings, like it's kind of similar to First Law. Is like the further you get into the overall realm, the clearer the plot becomes, the more magical it becomes, the more connections I think you would see upon reread, which is also can be said of Malazan. But I think it really is a slow story about getting to know someone, and for people who have that emotional impact is because you've seen all the small slow moments, and the majority of people's lives are those small slow moments, and so you really are invested and you really feel like you know them. And for most people who are reading Hob, the character driven, like there's a series you have to be connected to the characters to really enjoy. And if you're not connected to the character, and let me say characters, but it's Fitz. If you're not connected to Fitz, it's
Well, in the
not
first trilogy, it's all from his perspective. So if you're not in it
Mhm.
for Fitz, you're in trouble because
it's
it's
not a
just him.
series that you can enjoy, because while the world is big, the magic is vast, you don't really have an understanding of it because he doesn't have an understanding of it, and he doesn't see it in like the everyday. So while I do think it's worth the hype, I do think that all those criticisms are extremely valid. Like, it's not about the plot at all. It's about him and his personhood and his development and his relationships with these people in this place and his like place in the society.
Yeah, I would agree with pretty much all of that. I mean, because like people always say that Joe Abercrombie is like a really character-driven writer, and he is. That's not untrue. When you read Hobb, you're like, man, Abercrombie books seem shallow and like, you know, formulaic compared to Robin Hobb's characters. It's because like the way that you just kind of like wallow and marinate in the psyches of characters in a Robin Hobb book, that you just like I don't think any other books that I've read have done that, where you're just like in their heads. It's not just from their perspective, you're in their heads and hearts like the entire time. Like the messiness of their feelings all of the time, and the like depression of that all of the time. Like it's like draining and exhausting and emotionally harrowing. So like when people feel like they've been through something when they've read Robin Hobb books, it's because like you feel like you've been like like more on the road with Fitz than you could even be if you actually were, because like you're in his mind, like not just like next to him, and like to watch him go through that internally and externally and feel like you were along for the ride, you feel like you went through something with him. So like I think I teared up once or twice reading Robin Hobb books. Like I was never sobbing and throwing children out of windows, but you know, like I still felt like emotionally drained, like especially like Royal Assassin remains my favorite book in the realm of the Elderlings, because like I mean it did have a lot more plot than we had before and than in a lot of the books, but it also was just such a harrowing experience, like what Fitz goes through with that book, and reading it, like I mean my soul felt like a wrung out towel. So I get why people get emotional about it.
Your turn again, Alan.
I was just looking. I was like, did I read books in 2020? I was looking at my spreadsheets, and I'm like, have I been? This is my third year, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. This is my fourth year on book 2. Is 2020 to 2023, is that 3 or 4 years? It seems like it's 3. Is it inclusive? Sorry, I'm having an issue.
We're readers, not mathematicians.
I have an extra tab on my spreadsheet that it didn't exist, and I do not recall.
I tell them that all the time.
I have. The problem with this is like, in order for us to debate it, it has to be crap that y'all have read, and I haven't read anything. So I'm gonna have to be. I'm gonna have to go negative again. Dang it! I wanted to go positive, but it's all gonna be on stuff that no one's read.
You're underestimating us.
I mean, no, I just know I just know that people don't read the stuff I read. And especially if it's like not like most of the stuff that is worth the hype is not actually fantasy, like that I'm talking about. Like a lot of the fantasy.
You all read Senlin?
I mean, I love Senlin, but I don't think Senlin is hyped nearly enough. Let me tell you something that is not worth, that is excellent. Like I like it, but it's not worth the hype. I'm just going to pick a book. I'll just pick a book. I won't say a series. Dark Age by Pierce Brown. That book is not as good as people think it is.
I was going to do Red Rising for my next one.
So Dark Age, like Red Rising, I think the original trilogy is worth the hype. I do. Like, I think like it is a fun, like space action, like with more to it than you would think there is. I love the first 3 books. The series as a whole, Iron Gold, like all these people out here, like saying that Iron Gold's their favorite book. Like, I don't know. Like, no, it's not. Like, I'm gonna flat out tell them they're reading it wrong. I'm gonna pull people from the front. You didn't understand it. That's why it's your favorite. And Dark Age, like
the best thing he's ever written.
No, that's not true. I mean, I think his writing is the best, but I don't think it's the best thing he's written. I think technically, like, I think from a like purely like syntactical and technical point of view, maybe, but like I don't think it's even the most interesting book he's written. And also it's another thing that everyone's like, oh, have you gotten to the part? It's so dark. And I'm like, that was it? Like, I read books where like that happens like every other page.
What
Like,
book have you read where that happens every other page?
I'm not gonna spoil it, but like that's not that dark of a thing. Like, it's,
I want to know what book so I can read that, because I haven't read Dark Age, but that sounds like it would be my type of thing. So just put it in the chat.
it's in Dark Age. Like, anyway, Dark Age is too long, in my opinion.
It's a little
so I do like Red Rising, but I didn't enjoy book 4 all that much. Like, I get it's leading to book 5, which I did enjoy more. But I didn't enjoy it as much as, like, I don't understand the hype for the second trilogy. I don't like it as much as the first one. I think the characters are worse than in the first trilogy.
You mean worse written or worse people? Because I agree they're worse.
No. I don't like them as much. Like, I don't enjoy them as much. Like, what's his stupid name? Winston, Edwin,
Daryl?
The detective guy, the guy that sucks.
Ephraim?
There you go. Ephraim sucks.
Ephraim is
sucks.
great.
Lyra sucks.
Lyra is great. Well, I like Ephraim better, but
Lyra sucks.
Lyra's fine.
Lysander really sucks.
Correct.
So really, it's Darrow. Like, I like I like Virginia. Like, it's like I watched this basically for Virginia. And is Ragnar in the first one of the first set or the second set? Ragnar's in the first 3. Really? Oh, well, then I don't even think. I'm taking a point away from the second. I was gonna give it Ragnar. No, you don't even get Ragnar. Like, I just wish I liked it enough to where I would bust my TBR right now and read the freaking arc. But, like,
do you have the arc?
I mean, no, because I don't want to get dinged for getting it and then not reading it before it comes out, because it's 700
I thought
pages.
you just had it and were deciding not to read it, and I was going to kill you.
I didn't request it because I knew that I wasn't going to have the ability to bust the TBR to read it. And I am going to read it. And as soon as people start talking about it, like, I'm going to want to read it. I'm
pretty upset that it's not the last book. Not going to lie.
Yeah, because you got to wait again for,
it also ruins the symmetry of 3 and 3.
That's true. Speaking of which, Liene, is there a good place to get a synopsis of the first?
I mean, there's an entire Red Rising wiki.
Is there? Okay, cool. Then I'll just read that. But the problem is I need to read that before this next book comes out, because then the wiki will be riddled with light space bringer crap.
I just started rereading my 3rd time Morningstar today. At the beginning of Morningstar had the road so far. Here's what happened in Red Rising. Here's what happened in Golden Sun.
Oh,
and it's possible that Dark Age has that for Iron Gold, or that Lightbringer will have that for Iron Gold and Dark Age. I don't know that it will, but Morningstar did. So,
yeah. So I like Red Rising. I do. I think it is very exciting, but I don't like Dark Age. Red Rising doesn't live in my brain rent free like some other things. So I don't think it is worth the hype. Like, this is such a loaded show. Like, why did we phrase these things this way? Because we're literally dogging on things that we enjoy because of the discourse surrounding them. Because I enjoy Red Rising. I don't think it's bad at all. I think people that hate it are wrong, but I don't think it's as good as people like Liene say it is.
But hype is like a double-edged sword, because hype sells books. Hype helps authors keep writing. Hype puts books on your radar that would otherwise not be there.
That's why Red Rising says that it's Game of Thrones meets Hunger Games in space. And you're like, okay.
But hype can also negatively, I've never seen a case where hype positively impacts my reading experience. So hype can often negatively impact your reading experience because it gives you outside expectations.
Hype can be the reason that you read something at all in the first place.
That is true. That is true.
You wouldn't have picked it up otherwise.
That is true. Like Sephi the Quiet, get out of here. Go.
You just don't like her name?
No, I don't like the character. I know who that is.
Get out of here.
You get out of here.
You're just wrong.
I haven't read Iron Gold and Dark Age. I read the original trilogy, which I do think is worth the hype, but I have to abstain from the Dark Age commentary for that.
No, I agree with you. I think the original trilogy is worth the hype. I agree.
I mean, I like the next 2 because I think the first 3 are more fun, but I think the fact that it is harder to tell a story where you see people that you liked once before, you see them isn't there some quote about like living so long that you become the
You
enemy?
either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain.
That. So like watching that happen and watching the complicated situation like unfold in a way that's believably would be complicated and like it's not like nice. And I think he's done a really good job of kind of like doing the thought experiment of like, okay, so like given where we left things in Morningstar, how might things look now in all of the mess and badness of that? And I just think that it's like really it's honestly more interesting to me to read that than like the heroic fun story of like the rebellion of Red Rising, which is like fun and it's like it's exciting and I have a good time reading it, but I just think it's like more intellectually stimulating to read Iron Gold and Dark Age.
I mean, and maybe that's where we differ because like my fondness for revolutions and rebellions is well known, and I think the second two books are I think they're more boring than the first three books. I do understand what you're saying. I just like maybe if Iron Gold wasn't such a drag, like I don't know. I don't like Iron Gold.
You're a drag, Alan.
People have said that. That's true.
Oh.
When I got students dozing off in the front row, I mean, you know.
I feel like Alan, you're Fitchner to your students.
I'm definitely Fitchner. I love Fitchner. The problem is none of the characters I like are in the second trilogy. They're all in the first one.
I can't have any commentary because I haven't read Red Rising or any of that stuff.
Oh, dang it.
Rodger, why don't you read any of my favorite books? I don't understand this.
But I don't feel like the second trilogy is that hyped because I never hear anybody talk about it. I always hear about the Red Rising trilogy, the original three. I hear everybody and their mom being anticipated for Lightbringer, but I haven't heard that many people talking about Dark Age and Iron Gold.
A lot of people were waiting to start it because they didn't have any information about what was supposed to be the last book.
Holy crap, Rodger! Are those Dritz books that are facing out on your shelf?
They're the War of the Spider Queen.
Nice. That's awesome.
But this is Drizzt. This is other stuff, and then this is Elminster.
Oh, freaking Elminster can go. Like Elminster's cool. I read like R.A. Salvatore was my guy. Like, and after the 1,000 Orcs though, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like,
that's why I wait for the full trilogies to be released, and then I binge them. So I only read Drizzt books like every 4-ish years. So that's not quite as.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I just kept like every time it came out, I'm like hardback. Can anyone stay dead? Hardback. Like it's just D&D books. I love Forgotten Realms books. I miss them so much. Sorry, I derailed it. I just saw those books. I have the first War of the Spider Queen one. That's why.
We found them at the last bookstore, or whatever it is in LA, the like bougie used bookstore.
Their prices aren't great, but it's a fun place to be.
Yeah.
Are y'all both in Los Angeles?
I'm in Irvine, so I'm like an hour south.
And are you you're in California, right, Liene?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Why?
Why not?
Apparently, LA is also not worth the hype.
It's definitely not. I'm trying to figure out, like, are you independently wealthy?
No. I work for a living to pay my rent.
They pay you enough to live there?
Just
I mean, I also work for a living, but they don't pay me enough to live they don't pay me enough to live near where I work.
Well,
yeah, I know. Well, you shouldn't have been teacher, idiot. Yeah, no, I got it.
It's because I post so many angry clickbaity rant videos that I'm making millions of dollars.
Don't you do some HR nonsense? Don't you do HR?
And accounting.
How do you live in LA?
I mean, accounting is kind of where the money's at. People pay a lot of money for people to manage their money.
I don't live in like the fanciest apartment. I live in like a very old building, and I got in during COVID when they had like a special, and now I'm kind of locked in, and I'm never gonna move.
I can only afford it because I live in subsidized student housing on campus.
Nice. What city are you in? Where are you, Aaron? What state?
And is it worth the hype so we can stay on the theme?
Where are you?
I live in DC.
That is definitely worth the hype. DC's awesome. I got a kid that got accepted into Georgetown but can't go because she's in that. Her parents are Panama City rich, but they're not Georgetown rich. So they make too much money for her to get any financial aid. And they don't make enough money to pay for Georgetown. So she's very disappointed because she can't go because she got accepted, which is very sad. But I love DC. Many of my friends live in DC. DC is awesome.
Okay, I had to go to a different part of my shows. I had to rethink my options since, thieves were thieving. But
me and Rodger both shanked.
I think we're all gonna. I feel like this might be unanimous. I don't know Rodger enough to know if he is gonna be in alignment with the rest of us,
or if I've even read it, because so far I don't read. Apparently,
right?
I haven't read anything.
The Bone Saga.
I haven't read that either. I haven't.
Rodger.
Even Alan has read that.
I have read the first book. I haven't read the rest. I've only read.
Although, funnily enough, I only own it because I didn't want the Illumicrate version of Babel that I had, so I traded Jess, and she sent me Jade City so I could get that out of my house because it was not going to live here anymore.
Listen, when I tell you, I just posted a video. I read this today. I'm gonna get as much money as I can.
What edition of Babel is that? I was gonna ask earlier.
That's Fairy Loot.
The Fairy Loot one.
Nice.
I have the Waterstones one.
It's going by. But yeah, I do think that the Bone Saga is worth the hype. I love it. I think it sticks the landing. But I also like this first book is my favorite, even though I think the third book is the best. But this is my favorite in the trilogy.
Really?
Yeah.
I am
I've
so
read the
happy
first two, and
to
I feel
find
that way.
someone to have the opinion that it's not Jade Legacy. Like Jade City is the favorite. That's so cool.
Yeah. A lot of people say Jade City or Jade War.
Action-packed of the three. And also, Hilo is my favorite character in the series, and I think this is the book where we get the most Hilo. So this is why it's my favorite. But I definitely think it's worth the hype. Obviously, it's great. You all should read it in the comments if you haven't already.
And I feel confident saying that it is worth the hype because, go
Aaron,
on.
Hero's
Hilo is
the
amazing.
worst. Hero's
Hilo's
terrible.
Great. Hilo's wonderful. I mean, he's not good.
I hate him so much. I hate Hilo so much. You know who's better than Hilo? Barrow. That's right.
The cockroach?
That's what I hate Barrow worse than Hilo.
I was going to say.
I don't like Hilo, but I definitely don't.
I was about to disconnect your internet.
No, I know. Gonna make me lose my Wi-Fi password.
But I feel confident saying that Jade City is worth the hype because I read it after all of the hype, and I was so afraid because I never like hyped books. I'm always like, Alan made an entire Jeopardy category about how I don't have popular opinions. So I was like, there's just no way that I like this. If I like this at all, I can't possibly like it as much as everyone else seems to. And when I started reading it and I could not put it down for 24, 48 hours, I was like, one, it's exciting to read a book that you're excited to read. So that's just fun. But I was like, I don't hate it. In fact, I love it. Oh my gosh, this is such a relief. So yeah, I think it's worth the hype. Because I was hyped for it and still I wasn't like, well, it's good, but it's overhyped. I was like, no, this is great. This deserves the hype.
Well, that was interesting because it was very hyped for a particular period of time, but it hasn't really had sustained hype. Because now people don't talk about it as much, I feel like. I just haven't read it because mafia is I don't like that as a buzzword for people trying to sell me something.
Literally are gagging.
Because they're always
it's less mafia and more. I know these words mean the same thing, but the way it's represented in the book is different. Because I feel like when you hear mafia, you're thinking gunfights and back alleys, and it's more family crime family drama. Because they have businesses, they have Ship Street, which is Wall Street, where they are
family drama is better.
It's like
me.
Peaky Blinders.
People always talk about it like The Godfather, and I don't like The Godfather.
It's more The Wire than The Godfather.
Or Peaky Blinders. It's exactly like Peaky Blinders, except in Asia.
I hate Peaky Blinders.
But even the characters are good. The sister is exactly like the sister in Peaky Blinders, and Hilo is a combination of Tommy and Arthur. And everything about a lot of
Liene,
the situation.
No one here has seen Peaky Blinders.
Untrue.
I haven't seen it.
I haven't either, and neither is
But
Aaron.
you said you hate it, Alan. How can you hate it if you haven't seen it?
Oh, because
it's too hyped. It's too hyped, and he's not hyping it. Therefore, it is bad.
I've seen other people watch an episode, and
you've seen other people see it. Now you don't like it.
Did you watch a reaction on YouTube or something?
No, it's been.
They seem too into this. I can't watch this.
No, I just don't need to watch grimy Irish people commit crimes.
They're not Irish.
You don't know what they are.
They're in Birmingham.
Birmingham, Alabama?
No.
Oh. There's a lot of crime in Birmingham.
That's where I'm from.
Birmingham, Alabama?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. My grandparents lived outside of it in Decatur. I used to go to Birmingham or I guess
Is it
Huntsville.
worth the hype?
Decatur? It's not hype.
There's no hype.
And Birmingham's not hyped except as there being a lot of crime in Alabama in that city. My city's not worth the hype either. Panama City Beach, it's not worth the hype. Stop coming here. Stop. Do not come here. Anybody watching this, it's not worth the hype. It's just white sand. That's all it is. We dye it.
Irvine does live up
Do
to the
you
hype.
really?
It is overly manicured and looks like nobody lives here. And I wonder what they do with people that don't have homes, because you never see them in Irvine. So I'm very curious what the city does.
They're all in
Not
LA.
good things.
I can promise you they're all here.
They ship them to LA. It's like they're under the streets. It's like Hot Fuzz.
Well, I mean, that is literally a problem, that surrounding cities supposedly have better rates of homelessness, and that's just because they push them into LA, and then LA just has to take care of them.
Nice.
Yep.
So, Jade City. Okay, so Jade City didn't have any hype when we read it, because Jade War hadn't even come out yet. It was like 2 months before Jade War came out. A bunch of us read it on a Discord, and there were a few of us who liked it, but didn't love it, and so there wasn't any hype. And so I thought Jade City was fine. I think I like it more over time than I did when I first read it, because this was back when I first got into BookTube and reading really quickly was high priority, and Jade City just took me a long time to read. It took 10 days to read, and it's not that long. And so I was angry at it for
put it down. What were
janking
you
my
doing
TBR.
wrong?
I mean, it's various. It just depends on what's going on at school. And then the window came that Rodger was talking about when Jade Legacy came out, and it was a bunch of RF Kuang type hype about it, and
Except deserved.
No, I can't get behind it. With the hype surrounding it, if Jade Legacy does not heal my limp,
Heal the children that you threw out of a window when you read Hop.
if I cannot walk straight and completely healed from the car accident after reading Jade Legacy, it's not going to live up to the hype that was given to me. Now,
recently, be so mad when you realize that this whole time you could have been healed if you had just read Jade Legacy, and it's your own fault
that would make me so upset. Now, recently, I have a lot of people having read, having finished the series, who are saying that it is very good. It is very good. But it's not like their favorite book ever. It's just really good. And that is where I think I'm going to land, because too many people I know really like it for me to buck that trend. I'm probably going to like it also. I was just like, there's no way I'm going to like it as much as people say I'm going to. There's no way. So I don't know. But I like Jade City. I don't think there's a ton of hype around Jade City. I think all the hype is around Legacy. So I would say Jade City, the first book, lives up to its hype in that it is exactly what people say it is. When people say what it is, it's exactly that. And either you like that or you don't. But I don't think Jade City is missold at all. And I don't know about the other two. So
I do think one of the reasons it got hype and also then continued to be hyped and people found that it lived up to the hype, it was because it does feel so fresh and different from other fantasy that we have, because it's doing something quite different. Yeah. And so then just by virtue of that, people reading it, you're like, well, I don't know if I like it, but it's fresh. This is not what I've been reading. This is not another knight with a sword and a companion on a quest. This is not that. So yeah, for that alone, it gets points, I think, from a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't when it first came out, I read the first two in 2020. And there's a little bit of and I read Jade Legacy when it came. I had an arc of it, but I think it was very different than a lot of there really weren't any comp titles at the time, because it starts out in the 70s, and there are no fantasy books really that you can even think of that take place in the 1970s where they're driving cars.
Because it doesn't read like urban fantasy, even though technically it's fantasy in an urban environment.
Yeah.
Right. And then by the time you get to Jade Legacy, it's present day almost, with cell phones and all these other things. So it keeps up with the times and the time passing in worlds. So its uniqueness plays into the hype, because it's I could, for example, a book we talked about earlier, the Poppy War. I could name 10 books off the top of my head about a war fantasy with an orphan or a magical school setting or a war fantasy. But off the top of my head, even with research, I couldn't name 10 books like this, and the comp titles to this are in a completely different genre. And so it's like you're automatically gonna get points because it's not like everything else I've read.
It's not like other girls.
It is not like other girls.
But it's like it's not. But I think if it was only that it was like something different and original, that would get everyone's attention. But I think it like had longevity because not only was it doing something really different, it was doing it really well. And so people were like, "What is this?" And also, where has this been my whole life? Because why weren't people doing this? Because this is great.
Like, I also don't think you're able to, like, if you enjoy it, you're not lukewarm to these characters. You either love them or you hate them, or like you have characters that like I would die for you, and other ones I want you to get hit by a bus immediately.
Yeah, I think I also think there's like a cool factor. Not like in like you're cool that you've read Jade City. I mean like the stuff that the characters are doing and the scenes. It's a little bit Red Rising has this, and I'm sure there's other examples where it's like it's literally I literally mean it's cool. Like when like you imagine what's going on and you're like, this is just really cool. Like if you imagine a TV show version of it, you're like, it's just like there's fighting in other books and there's battles in other books and there's like enemies overcoming or like heroes overcoming enemies, whatever. But Allomancy I think is also quite cool. So like like when they describe how they're using jade, like how the fights go down and how the magic works, it's just cool. You know what I mean? And the way like the cars they drive and like the way that they are with each other, it's just very cool. So you feel cool reading it.
I never feel cool, Liene.
Okay, well, continue reading Blade itself.
Will that make me cool?
No, you'll feel right at home.
Oh.
Also, I think another thing that works for it in his favor is like people say morally gray, but these characters are actually morally gray.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're trying to be. It's just like, can you really have like a quasi government in a place and have a gang of people who do your bidding and then not be questionable morality from time to time?
Yeah, you're like, why am I rooting for this? I shouldn't be rooting for this.
All right, Liene, what's worth the hype?
Oh man. I don't know if everyone's read this. If not, I'll pick something else. Although you guys have picked a bunch of the stuff that I would have picked. 6 of Crows.
I have read that. Look at me, I read something.
You haven't read it, Aaron?
Mm-mm.
I know Alan started it.
Okay, the first 2 chapters were way better than they had a right to be. That's all I've read. Did I not tell you that? I should have.
You did. I just wanted it to be told to the world.
Yeah, like I went into reading it like expecting I was gonna make fun of it, and I did some, but it was much better than I thought it was gonna be. Those first 2 chapters, I haven't finished it yet. It's still sitting on my desk, needing to be read. But
there's another guy with a cane. You know, Kaz has a limp and a cane, so maybe you should read it right now.
Read all these books with crippled people, like me.
Was the crippled guy your favorite?
Of the Malazan books? No,
Yeah.
It was not. I mean, it should be now because I mean,
Which one was? I know this is off topic, but I'm curious.
Book 6, Bone Hunters, is my favorite.
It's an unpopular opinion.
That's because it's the least philosophical and the most my favorite things occur in it, and there's not a lot of standing around.
There must be some sieges or some military stuff.
Is that a desert book?
It is the culmination of the desert books. It's where like everything kind of meets. And yes, there's one of my favorite sieges of all time, Rodger. You're absolutely correct. And it's sieges and then a ton of military stuff. So yeah,
at least you're consistent. So at least people
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
It's not like when I try to predict if Jashana will like something, and I'm like, you found the most random thing to dislike about this book. What are you talking about?
Jashana is a wild card. Unless it's City of Girls.
Rodger?
Do I think 6 of Crows just book 1 or the duology overall?
If you have 2 different answers for that, feel free to give us both.
I like 6 of Crows, but I think the people who are rabid fans of 6 of Crows are those kinds of R.F. Kuang stans where it is like the best thing they've ever read. Kaz and Inej are like their ride or dies and they can't live without them. And Kaz and his backstory, like I can't with all of that.
I do feel personally attacked right now.
I had more fun with the King of Scars duology than I had with Six of Crows.
Those books are objectively worse, Rodger. What are you talking about?
For sure.
I didn't say they're better. I said I had more fun. I'm very well aware of the problems and the plot holes and the weird things. But to Six of Crows, I think it has a very distinctive style that is not like most books set in that age range. And I think that the characters don't feel like the teenagers that they should be. I think it's probably one of my biggest complaints because I aged them up just internally.
I would just like to remind everyone that Jon Snow is 14 years old, but carry on.
Have I ever thirsted after Jon Snow? Absolutely not.
Is Jon Snow really 14?
Yes.
I mean, all the people are super young in A Song of Ice and Fire.
I mean,
like,
are they
Sansa's,
thirsting
like,
after
12 or
Jon Snow, or are
13.
they thirsting after Kit Harington?
I'm just saying, like, if it's believable that Jon Snow is doing the things he's doing in those books and behaving the ways he's behaving at 14, then it's just as believable that Kaz Brekker at 17.
I'm trying to imagine my useless freshmen doing what Jon Snow does. They would just like, oh my gosh.
I've only read the first 3 books. So he hasn't started
Fire?
doing all the things. Yes, he hasn't started doing all the things that he does. That I know.
But even when he does
in
in the first 3 books, he's 14.
But I mean, it's whatever, fine. But like, he's also not running like a crime family.
That's because he wasn't raised on the streets.
Well,
he's just raised in the horse pens out back because
that's why Fitz was made.
Okay, I'm just okay. Instead of Six of Crows, is Game of Thrones worth the hype?
Yes.
I haven't read it.
The show, no, but the book, yes. Yes.
I plan on reading it this year. I'm going to read the whole series that's out.
How have you read like 300 books a year and not Game of Thrones?
Because
How did that just like sneak in there?
I have this thing where I don't read books I think I'm going to enjoy.
Okay.
That's fair.
That explains our read along.
I get that. Liana, yes, like the Song of Ice and Fire, I can easily, thank goodness, I can just be like, yes, it's worth the hype. I don't have to like equivocate. I don't have to hate on something. Yes, it's worth the hype. And people that like to hate on Game of Thrones, I mean, okay, like you can do that, but it is worth the hype. Like I haven't read
anything like the show. I think is worth the hype.
Yeah, it's even better than the show, and I haven't read.
Although it's crazy
for scene,
like first season of the show and the first book are like exactly the same.
And I haven't read a Ice and Fire book since I guess almost 12 years since Dance of Dragons came out, and it's still worth the hype. Like I don't love books 4 and 5 as much as the first 3, but I think that series is surely worth the hype.
And Fire and Blood, I had like a really good time reading, which I wasn't expecting.
Someone told me that I would enjoy that since I like history.
I expected to find it impressive, kind of like what you say about Dark Age, where you're like, oh, it's technically well written, but like, and it's not enjoyable. That's what I expected to get out of Fire and Blood. And then I was reading it, I was like, I'm so into this. I'm having such a good time reading this. I was not expecting that.
I don't know. I just have like such a weird streak in me where just like when something is as lauded as something like A Song of Ice and Fire, I find it difficult to say it's worth the hype because it depends. If you want something very sprawling and political with very little to no magic, then
but because it got so popular, I feel like it passed the bell curve into anti-hype because now everyone's like, everyone is like, Song of Ice, is it even grimdark? Song of Ice and Fire is so overrated. Like,
I read all
the
books
sucks
before the show came out.
I gave them all 5 stars that I've read so far, so I love the books. I just find it very difficult to be like, yes, it deserves unequivocal hype and everybody should read it, because no, everybody shouldn't read it. Not everybody's gonna like it.
There's nothing that everyone should read.
That's why I have such a hard time. It's easier for me to say something deserves more hype.
Everyone should read it.
What is it?
I've been wanting to read that for forever. I have it, but I haven't read it.
The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I think this is a book that literally everyone will enjoy.
I've heard the author's name. Yeah, I have not heard of that book.
I have it.
It's like his most popular work. It takes place in 1940s Barcelona. It's like a bit of a mystery, bit of a dark character study.
It's a ripoff of Name of the Wind, right?
No, I think you're getting that confused with the first binding, which is another one that probably doesn't live up to the hype.
Or is it Empire of Silence that I'm thinking of?
Liana, is Name of the Wind.
I had that on my list to talk about because I did read Empire of Silence last month.
Or Name of the Wind wasn't going to be on my list, but I was afraid, Alan, that it would be a repeat of our very first conversation where I asked you why you hate all women. because you don't like
I
Denna.
think Name of the Wind is worth the hype. I think Denna and the conclusion of that book is stupid, but I think the book is still worth the hype. Like Denna's an awful character, and the
An
way they deal
awful
with
character.
oh yeah, one of my least favorite characters in all of fantasy. It's a true story. Like I have
She's not even in it that much.
that is how much like I literally have her and other characters I hate on the dartboard on my door that I very frequently just throw darts at when I'm
Have you read Gentleman
Okay.
Bastards?
no. Is there a
Just because
character?
most people that hate Denna also hate Sabbatha, so I was going to be like, do you also hate Sabbatha?
Hold on, her name is Sabbatha, like Tabitha with an S.
Yeah.
Get
So
a
you already hate her.
get a
because of
normal
that?
name.
Okay.
Sabbath. Watch, all the Sabbathas are about to like attack me. Like my name's
just-
Sabbatha.
That just makes me think of the old fairy in Disenchanted, and her name is Sagatha. And now that's all I'm going to hear every time I hear Sabbatha.
I mean, Alan, do you also feel this way about Yennefer?
yes, I think Yennefer's name is dumb. I'm like, just call yourself Jennifer. Come on. Like
But
every
it just
time
really
Gareth-
wouldn't be the same.
every
if-
time Garrett's like Yen, just say Jen. Come on. Like, just like stop. You're not gonna yump on the trampoline. Like, you know what I mean? Go eat your yelly
Yum.
beans. Dumb.
I think it's
a
spelled with a
Y.
Y.
It is spelled a Y because she's not like other girls. Don't worry. I always ditch her. She gets really upset that I prefer Triss to her. Get out of my face, Yennefer. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Stay here on this mountain by
So
yourself.
we're talking about the video game, not the books.
Yeah. Forget the books. The video games are where it's at.
I was worried that Alan's reading these books and he thinks he is Geralt and he's making some choices.
No. Definitely video games. People be like, Triss, she took advantage of him when he had amnesia. I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, Yennefer's mean and unpleasant. So bye.
She is mean and unpleasant, but I was just talking about her name being Yennefer because you had a problem with Sabbatha.
That's I also have a problem with Denna.
What's wrong with Denna? What name is that?
Oh, nothing. I don't like the
Oh.
character. I was bringing it back.
So her name is fine. You just don't like her as a person. It's
I mean, her
fine.
name reminds me of like a breakfast like joint. I don't know. She has some moons over my hammy for Quoth or something.
Like Denny's?
Yeah. It's like isn't like Denna the female form of Dennis or Denny?
I hadn't really thought about it like that, but
That's
I
what I'm
guess.
saying. That's what
I
I'm
mean,
saying.
of the names, like Quoth is a way worse name than Denna.
I thought we were
Yeah,
going to say
Quoth's a good
Denna
name,
should be Jenna. That's where I thought this was going, not Denna equals Denny's.
Look, Ambrose is the best character in that book anyway. So
Oh my, of course. Just like
no,
Barrow.
Ambrose sucks. I hate Ambrose.
Just like
I was
Barrow.
kidding. I was kidding. Ambrose sucks.
I
The
haven't
best
read Name of the
character
Wind
is
either.
Elodin.
I just don't read. Sorry.
Elodin's a freak, but I mean, I do like Elodin.
But Elodin is also 100% ripped off in Poppy War.
Oh,
Her
one
professor
yes,
is 100%
yes.
Elodin.
I called that when I read it. Anyway, we've derailed. Your question was Six of Crows. That was your question.
Yeah, but not enough people had read it. So
Well,
we moved on to Game of Thrones,
which is also good.
which is also good. Well, we've been going for almost an hour and a half. Do we want to go one more quick, like rapid fire round and we're not allowed to off road? We just say like yes or no? Or do we want to end it?
I have work. I've got to write a test.
Got to write a test.
Yes, I teach stupid children.
You should teach smart children.
And then you wouldn't even need
That's
to
the
write that
goal.
for them.
That's the goal. Look,
That's the goal.
if they would like, if I could reinvent school and have children sit there.
See, in this amount of time, we could have done a rapid fire round, but
Hush.
instead,
Wait, like, if I could get them to sit in the classroom, pay attention, be engaged, and actually learn it without me having to test and grade them, I would love to do that. I hate writing tests and I hate grading people.
I mean, you picked the wrong age range for that then.
Yeah, I know, but I don't have a master's degree, so I can't teach college.
Okay.
So, but if without the grade, without the threat of ruining their livelihood by a bad grade, they will not do the work. They won't. Like, there are a couple who will, but most of them won't. Like, so it makes me sad. Like, I hate having to test them. I'm like, what if you guys just paid attention and learned, like, you know, and did your best? But I have to give them a test, so it's dumb. So I have to write it. And yes, we could have done a rapid fire, but I took all that time explaining why I can't.
we still can, but rapid fire this
Okay,
time.
fine.
Roger, go.
No.
Give us a book.
Lord of the Rings.
Dang it, I was going to do that. Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
Haven't read it, but I don't think it's worth that.
Yeah, no. Like, I mean, I've read it like in 7th grade, but I haven't read it since then. But
So 7th grade
no,
Alan didn't think it was worth the hype.
no, 7th
I
grade
haven't even
Alan
seen the movies, and I don't
wanted
think
to
it's
read
worth
another
the hype.
Dritz book.
All right, Alan, give us yours.
Oh, I'd come back to me. I didn't think of one.
Aaron, give us
Leviathan
yours.
Wakes. Don't think it's worth the hype.
Leviathan
read it.
Wakes, almost certainly
haven't
not.
read it? Okay, boom. Dune. I think it's worth the hype.
I don't think it's worth the hype.
I don't think it's worth the hype.
There's
I
no
think
way
it's
it can be
kind of
worth the hype to
homophobic.
me.
Way of Kings.
Don't think it's worth the hype.
Don't think it's worth the hype.
I like it, but I don't think it's worth the hype that it's getting.
Yes, this is a victory tonight.
I am only through part 1, and Shallan may be the most unfunny character
Ooh,
in
she
all
gets
of
worse.
fantasy.
Is she worse than Denna?
Well, Denna doesn't try to make jokes, so it's hard to compare. I just don't like Shallan's humor. No, I don't dislike her more than Denna. I just don't like anything she says. I just don't want her to talk. But I'm gonna say that's probably not gonna be worth the hype because Way of Kings is like really, really hyped.
Unpopular opinion on Stormlight, the 3rd and the 4th book are so much better than the 1st and the 2nd.
The
But
4th book
everyone
is my
says Words of
favorite
Radiance
because
is
I
the
thought Words
best.
of Radiance was the one everyone loves.
yeah, they love
is.
The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, but I personally think that Oathbringer and Rhythm of War are significantly better.
That is definitely a hot take. People
I agree
hate
with
Rhythm
you,
of
though.
War.
I love Rhythm of War because it gets
I
all
cried
science.
with it's so good. Sanderson was really in his bag. He was writing when he wrote that. He wasn't writing no side books. He was focused.
My favorite cover is Rhythm of War, if that helps.
Because you only read Way of Kings and then you DNF the rest of the series, I'm assuming.
Indeed. Alan, give us yours.
I
We
don't
came back to
have-
you.
I don't have one. I
Lies.
couldn't find anything that anybody might have read. Hold
Shadows
on.
of the App. I haven't read it, but I don't.
Or
I think it's worth
Pratchett.
the hype
You
because
read-
it haven't.
I
Oh
believe
yeah,
Alan has read a
Discworld.
Pratchett.
Boom. The city. The any Discworld. Weird Sisters or whatever. Weird Sisters
Pick what I've read.
is Discworld is. I don't know. I don't know if Discworld's worth the hype. Like I love Discworld more than I can say, but I'm not certain it's worth the hype for most people.
I haven't read it, but I think it's worth the hype because I think there are multiple series, and so there's probably something for everybody in there.
Yeah, if you had said a specific book, I could say yes or no, but all of Discworld, that's hard. That's
Yeah, that's true.
so many books.
That's
So like
true.
Guards, not worth the hype. Hogfather, yes, worth the hype.
Yeah, Hogfather's great.
I
Hogfather's
haven't
my
read
favorite.
anything in Discworld. I just get annoyed when everybody acts like Terry Pratchett invented the whole turtle on the elephant's back stuff from like
No.
Hindu mythology.
Yeah,
I'm like, can you shut your face, please?
Rodger,
And thank you.
I have to correct people with that all the time. I'm like, he didn't invent that. He's just using it. Like it's Hindu mythology.
Well, that's like
Same
how
thing.
Patrick
Boom, high five.
Patrick Rothfuss invented a character telling their own story. So any book that does that is just a ripoff of Name of the Wind.
yeah.
That's just
I think Pratchett is an absolute genius when it comes to language. I do. But yeah, I understand that like a lot of stuff is, referencing other things, and I like that. I think it's cool. But yeah, I think Discworld is worth the hype for me. I think for some people it won't be. Yeah, you know what? I'm going all in with Pratchett. It's worth the hype. You can deal with it.
I've never read Pratchett and have no intention of doing so anytime soon.
That's fair.
You should read Hogfather. That one's good.
That was my first one.
I mean, I already have to read The Blade itself. I have to read Jade City.
Definitely read
there's
Blade
things
itself.
that I'm more interested in.
Red
than-
Rising.
You got to read more of the Realm of the Elderlings. Keep going.
I've read Ship of Magic, and I just haven't picked up Mad Ship because I'm in the middle of writing my thesis dissertation. And I don't want to be sad and miserable. So I'm like waiting. I'm
Just of
waiting
all of
until
the
I'm
books
not.
you just named, read The Blade itself.
That one's in May. I already planned it because you told me that Glocta has funny commentary about like his boss or something, and
Oh,
that
he
I will
certainly
feel
does.
catharsis for how I feel.
I can't tell you how. I mean, I reread the first lot a lot all the time, obviously. But I also like when I say that those are my comfort reads, like that's why those are my comfort reads, because Glocta just hating life, hating his boss, hating stairs. It's just I live for it. I'm like, yes, I understand exactly what you're talking about. I feel this. That's how life is. It sucks. All right. Well, thanks for joining for this lovely conversation.
This was a delight.
Indeed, a delight.
It's so hot in my house. I got to go turn the air on. I'm dying.
Yeah. If anyone disagrees with us, just know that you're wrong. And yeah,
Fine.
we'll
Feel free to shout.
You're free to comment down below, but none of us will read the comments.
I read the
Feel
comments. but-
free.
yell at Alan in the comments, tell him he's being mean. He loves that.
Oh, I wasn't mean to
Tell us
you
what
this one.
fantasy books you think are or are not worth the hype.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. Thanks for keeping us
An actual outro. Well done. All right.
We didn't fight in this one, Liana.
We did.
We've turned a corner.
Well done.